Greetings, everyone. I'm excited to welcome Alastair Blenkin, CEO and founder at ProcurePro. Alastair, welcome to the show again.
Again, hey Ben, how are you? Good to be back.
Yeah, great to have you back. Always love repeat founders on this. That was a couple years ago. But for first time listeners here, tell us a little bit about your background.
Yeah, absolutely. I used to be a lawyer for about 5 minutes before I decided there was more to life and got into tech and then tried to build an AI company probably before it was cool back in 2017, maybe a bit ahead of my time. And the first company got killed by COVID and we pivoted to found ProcurePro, which is procurement software for general contractors in the construction industry. So COVID baby and been going up and to the right since.
Oh, that's great to hear. That's great to hear. Yeah, obviously things are going well. Raised a couple years ago, and now again we'll get into that. But tell us, let's talk about ProcurePro. Tell us a little bit of the products and their services it offers.
Yep, yeah, absolutely. So we are procurement software for construction. So for those not as familiar with the construction industry, think all the data centers that have been built, the schools, the hospitals. Every time you build one of these big 100, 200, $300 million buildings, you need 30, 40, 50 different subcontractors to do the concrete, the piling, the electricity, the landscaping. And the process to actually get those subcontractors on board is a bit of a dog's breakfast. So it's a sort of as expected, tangle of spreadsheets around planning, tracking, going out and getting quotes, bring them back in. But then that's that sort of tendering in Australian language or bidding in the US language. That process is pretty tried and tested from a software perspective. But procurement's more than that. It's actually vetting down, comparing these complex construction quotes, selecting them, managing your supply chain information, putting into a contract and describing a really pretty meaty workflow that we've digitized, wrapped up all in one place, and ultimately given construction general contractors control at the most critical juncture, which is spending money through their supply chain. Like, ironically, Ben, GCs, they don't actually build anything. They're just the middle managers of their subs who go and deliver on site.
And are these so it sounds like commercial construction for the most part?
Yeah, commercial, but also infrastructure. So thinking building roads and tunnels and various different sorts of buildings, but all construction focused.
Okay, interesting. And so in this niche, I'm curious, do you get to see then kind of emerging trends? Like you mentioned data centers, a lot of data centers being built. So are you first to see where the money is going then?
Yeah, look, it's talked a little bit. We characterize our journey as we're through Act One, and Act One never ends, but that's building workflow around a really critical control point. And Act Two is all about the intelligence layer that sits on top. As the world's obviously going crazy and rightfully with AI, and a lot of SaaS companies maybe questioning their future in the world, being a vertical SaaS gives you an opportunity with proprietary data sets to be able to build on top of that. And ours, which is pricing data, as you pointed out, Ben, probably can't quite do it yet, but give us a year or two, and I reckon we should be able to see pricing move ahead of the whole market based on live cost data flowing through your system.
Yeah, interesting. And tell us a little bit about your ideal customer. Are these mid to large global contractors? Tell us who you're after.
Yeah, so general contractors, once you have about 20 staff or you manage 3 or 4 projects, you start to need management systems. And so you've got this really, like, of all the different problems around this space of making your staff happier, driving productivity, getting ultimately it's all about insight and control and really oversight through this critical risk of your business when you're spending so much money at pretty breakneck speed. So you start at about 20 odd staff, you start to need these systems. And we've got customers through the mid-market all the way up to enterprise. One of the investors in our latest round is Bouygues, who's a big French Fortune 500 company operating across 80 different geographies. They use us as a customer across a number of their different businesses and countries, and now they've come on board as an investor. And everyone in between, building stuff, building the world around us.
That must make you feel good. That's got to be a huge vote of confidence when a user, a big company says, "Hey, we'd like to put some money in too."
Yeah, and make it all go faster. And I think construction is this interesting space. I always describe it as one that you can't really walk in and common sense your way around, but construction people certainly get it. And then I think looking externally from a venture perspective, it's this massive industry. It's one of the top 3 biggest industries in the world. There's a huge amount of spend, there's a huge amount of fragmentation in terms of the different players within the industry, and there's a whole lot of manual work. And I came from this legal background where you think lawyers would never be the ones to change, and then AI comes along, is really good at writing documents. And I really believe that construction's moment in the sun is not too far around the corner. There's so much data and there's so much pricing data in particular, which is really exciting.
Yeah, that is. Yeah, we love more data. And one more question here. In customer geography, are your customers global? Are they local?
Yeah, we've got this enterprise-wide product, so we have had to work up through the ranks to get from your early innovators through your middle majority and then to the enterprise echelons. Started the business in Australia, hence the accent. I expanded myself to the UK, started 2024, expanded into the Middle East 6 months ago, and then we've got our eyes set on doing the regionalization for the US later this year as part of this funding round. So we've got global customers, obviously stronger in Australia, but I think the UK expansion really starting to hit our strides. I'd say about it. We've got 15 of the top 50 construction companies are on board at varying stages of implementation in the UK within a couple of years. So just got to convert that all to enterprise wide and really capture the market.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, great to hear that. And then what year did you found the company?
So founded in 2020, probably spent a good year and a half building the biggest MVP ever because it's a big bit of meaty enterprise workflow. And then, yeah, been growing quickly but efficiently since then.
Okay. And then Leah, let's talk about growing and let's talk about your fundraising journey. So you raised maybe a couple, 3 years ago, but tell us, it looks like you had a recent round. So how much did you raise recently?
Yeah, so on the journey, we've done 3 rounds. The first one was angels, basically construction, our customers, and folks in construction tech. The second one was led by Airtree, who's one of Australia's big three VCs, invested in the likes of Canva and 9 other unicorns, as well as the founders of Aconex, so construction tech success story acquired by Oracle for 1.2 billion US. And then the latest round was 7 mil US, led by QIC, who's the Queensland Investment Corporation, the sovereign wealth fund of my home state, but they're a major infrastructure owner. So their asset owners are strategically valuable there. They're a major LP in a lot of the big US funds, and sort of the round dynamic then allowed us to bring this group of strategics together really before what's probably a bigger growth round coming at the next juncture.
Yeah. And so with this latest round, so 11 million USD with the latest. So what drove that? Why raise that next 11 billion?
Yeah, look, I think we had optionality in terms of our future, which is nice. We're like ridiculously efficient in terms of some of our SaaS metrics, which Ben, your content's been amazing to learn from since the earliest days and help me put some pretty great dashboards together going way back when. So I can really have the telemetry on your business, but super efficient in terms of LTV to CACs, like 40 plus payback periods, 6 to 8 months on average, gross margins of 85% odd. And so really it was about acceleration. There's a lot of product to build in vertical SaaS. You probably invest a little bit less in sales and marketing, but more heavily in product because your reputation goes quite quickly in those smaller logo constrained industries, part of the strategy. And so having really felt like we've worked out product and customer success, like we got 98% logo retention, 110 to 115% NRR. It's going, how do we scale across multiple geos basically at the same time, really hit the gas on growth and also still deliver on the product stuff, moving up market and making your AI bets at the same time.
Interesting. So yeah, a lot of SaaS metrics there. I'm curious to provide some context around those metrics. Would you say like your ACV, your contract size would be like a mid-market enterprise type contract?
Yeah, mid-market, I'd say on average, you could get your unders and overs. I think at the enterprise level, though, we've got line of sight at million plus ARR contracts, but on average, it's 50K ACV
Yeah.
at the moment.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. So it sounds like you found a nice formula because those are some great metrics. And then, like you said, it's about accelerating, expanding the geos, and then eventually sounds like coming into the US.
Yeah, exactly. And so US is like slightly different, but not too
Mhm.
different. So there's probably 3 months worth of bit of language stuff to do and been on the phone kind of midnight last night, the night before with USGCs who are confirming what we think we know and also pretty pumped about some of the opportunity and validated it's a similar gap in the market.
Yeah, I love it. Global expansion continues. And so tell us, you've had a couple rounds, so Angel, then 2 rounds after that. What's top of mind? Any fundraising lesson learned or pain points or aha moments that you'd like to share with the founder community?
Oh, I think the last one I did, I think my sort of mental soundbite for that was 98% of the work's in the preparation, like prepare really well more than you think and just get everything done. Like V150 on your deck, like all your FAQs ready to go, and then just like absolutely hammer the pipe. And the investors only see the time when you go to market, but you've been at it for kind of months in advance. I think probably some of the harder lessons learned on this fundraise was like around thinking about your timing. I got married in November, so I couldn't open a round before then. And so we opened around in December, which naturally is running into the end of the year. So it dragged out a little bit, opening something that dragged over the new year, which was a little bit of an elongated process compared to what we'd managed to achieve previously. But it's also not just time it in terms of when you open stuff up, but almost like looking ahead and going, what are my numbers going to be like a month or two into the raise period, and really optimizing around when your business looks the most attractive was probably the key lesson learned.
Yeah, that's interesting. And obviously, yeah, preparation is key, right? Timing. But I think trying to think if others have mentioned that, but you mentioned hammer the pipe, which I assume means as you go into this raise, have a nice accelerating pipeline that's building, to show those investors that you've got some nice velocity.
Oh, I was referring to the pipe of investors and obviously
Oh,
getting them
okay. Yeah.
pushed through, but momentum during the raise certainly helps. And
Yeah.
then that's just the give and take around what deal are you trying to do, really. Sometimes there were things that dropped when we came through that helped, and ultimately you present a set of numbers, which then keeps, if it keeps going up through the raise, changes the commercial dynamic as you go.
Yeah, yeah, makes sense. Yeah, you'd love to time it, yeah, as your pipeline is increasing. But tell us, so going after general contractors and some of these 20 staff and above, mid-market to global, tell us a little bit about your go-to-market motion. How are you reaching these general contractors?
Yeah, very sales led at them, which is pretty typical from a construction perspective. People pick up the phone because they're getting called by lots of different people, lots of different subbies. So it's where business gets done. And but ultimately, it's how do we transition to something that's balanced with marketing, and then we've built a second AI native product, which is basically a PLG quote comparison tool. So take complex 20, 30 page construction quotes in all sorts of different formats, throw them into the AI machine, come back basically leveled to 90% accurate. So that's really what we're launching at the moment. That's the Trojan horse into companies. So how do you accelerate sales velocity into what has been a bit of a traditionally slightly slower market to adopt, and ultimately how do you get into the enterprise before people really work it out?
Interesting. And what would your take be on we have this whole debate, right? The SaaS apocalypse and different things. If you're legacy SaaS and now evolving your product line to have some AI infused, or is it ripe for agentic AI, things like that? So tell us a little bit about your philosophy, because like you said, you were doing AI before it was cool. Like most of us who didn't know what was going on prior. But tell us a little bit about how you're thinking about how AI is shaping your roadmap.
Yeah, look, it's interesting. I think it really varies based on what type of business you are. I think if you're horizontal SaaS, you're potentially really exposed. But if is someone gonna spend hundreds of dollars of credits to save on a $20 a month license fee? There's more exposure there than say a vertical SaaS business where you're sitting on top of proprietary data. And it's also when you're looking at construction pricing information, I look at this like you're not looking for an AI, a generative solution to generate a non-deterministic outcome. So people want confidence in the numbers. I think the hype, particularly centered out of Silicon Valley, is real. It's AI is amazing, and I'm absolutely one of the people who's drinking the Kool-Aid and like 1,000% for it. But at the same time, you look at businesses that are not tech businesses, and you work out what's the capability of those sort of businesses to transform quickly. And does everyone just go and throw their whole tech stack out and replace it with Claude? I don't think so. I think software still exists and AI becomes table stakes. And so if your software doesn't have AI threaded throughout the experience within a couple of years' time, truly and genuinely, you might not have too much of a future. What that looks like for us, I categorize it as a few different things. There's a smaller PLG product, which is almost solve a really painful problem, which that might get commoditized in time, but ultimately when you connect that to workflow, it becomes like even more powerful. There's unlock the power in the data, in particular from a pricing and supply chain intelligence perspective, which is where we have a real competitive advantage. And then there's basically agentic workflows. So the typical stuff, what can we detect in the data? So for construction, risk is massive. It's 20 times more important than productivity gains because they can lose just money the click of their fingers. So it's how can we detect risk, suggest next best task, but ultimately move the needle around costs, both upside and downside. I think the metaphor I say to people from outside the construction industry, Ben, is you walk down the road, you don't ask three different people what a bottle of milk costs. You just know. But the
Mhm.
construction industry goes out to market and goes, subcontractor A, B, and C, what are you going to charge us for this service? And I believe in a future where you've got such good structure around your cost data that you can be more programmatic in how construction is pricing, which isn't just downstream procurement, it's upstream, like actually estimating what these projects cost. And then construction people might look at you and say, no, there's too many if, buts, and maybes that won't exist. But if you told me you could write a 100-page book report in 2 minutes 3 years ago, I wouldn't have believed you either.
Yeah. Yeah, no, interesting. Appreciate that insight, which leads us to the next big debate within SaaS and AI's pricing models. As those change from seat-based to whatever it might be, hybrid, outcome, agentic. So tell us a little bit about your pricing structure today.
Yeah, we've not, certainly not by our design, but we've been pretty fortunate to be a bit insulated from some of that pricing uncertainty and fear of software companies. Construction is a very collaborative industry by nature. And so some of the pioneers like Aconex and Procore, big leaders in the space, pioneered this pricing model, which was pinned to construction value, which is very polarizing for the industry, but it's basically a proxy for value. Basically, the more construction you do, times by a percentage, that equals a price. And as a result, you get a single number where you're not rate limited in terms of projects and users. Because there's so many people in the construction industry, it's a very collaborative need for software. You don't want to block and disincentivize use. And so as a result, we're effectively already insulated by having that value metric driving price with a few guardrails around it as a mechanism to go, hey, we're not going to get seat erosion. Some SaaS companies are having the come to Jesus kind of moment around that contraction.
Yeah, definitely. And so just say Stripe takes a percent of the revenue flowing through their platform, or that you're saying construction value, there's some percent that you charge based on that value.
Yeah, that's typically how it works. And you can put a few like guardrails around it, project volume and package volume, that sort of stuff. But it all kind of boils back to the same thing, which is how much construction are you doing?
Yeah. Okay. Makes sense. And then Alastair, so about, I don't know, 6 years in, do you have a favorite number or metric that you're focused on right now to guide the business? You mentioned several important metrics before, but are there things top of mind that you like to look at on a monthly basis or weekly basis?
Oh, ARR growth, like you're on, yeah. And that's probably just the one I've looked at in a few different lenses, but I look at 12 months trailing. And that's really of all the efficiency metrics, which is like where our business is really strong. And to give you some numbers, we're now over 10 mil ARR. We basically, these are Aussie numbers, but in our last round, we burnt 4 and added 9 mil of ARR, which is like over 2-to-1 ratio of ARR to capital burn, which is unheard of. But then ultimately it's how we do that. How do we do that quicker in a logo constrained market? The flip side is you got no churn and it's a market where you're not just going to win 5%. You can genuinely, like in Australia, we got 50% of the market, and we believe you can call it 90% market penetration is viable in these winner take most or one or two take most. But ultimately, like right now, given some of the strengths of the business, it's all about now nailing growth.
Yeah, which looks like a lot of growth since we last talked, looking back at the notes, which is great to see. And then what's your current team size?
We're at 90 globally, and we'll probably be about 130 in the next 12 to 18 months. And that's probably, I'd say, just org chart and ownership expansion. And then ideally, there's kind of some flatlining around not scaling through headcount, given how the world's changing with AI. But at the same time, when you're operating basically 4 distinct continents, you need some teams and some ownership structure in place.
Yeah, I can't have the agentic AI unit operating in some country. Need a real person there for now. But so it looks like about double the headcount since we last spoke. And yeah, tell us, thinking about internal AI use, what is your philosophy right now with hiring a person versus can AI software do that?
Yeah, look, we've got some really great use cases. It's really like completely embedded in the engineering team, like step changing productivity, which is great. When you got a larger code base as well, there's always, you read the blog posts around going like, how ridiculous is it? When you have a larger code base, there's stuff to contend with and there's complexity compared to, yeah, I'm going to just go and code something brand new over the weekend. There's good stuff happening there, but like with some work to modularize and really make things effective. On the commercial side of the business, so there's a whole lot of investment being put into the GTM side, which is working through. We've got supports like running really well, internal tooling around like product questions. It's don't ask a person, ask the Julius in Slack. And there's lots of I'd say great use cases within that. And ultimately the whole business runs on Claude. Everyone's got access to it. But for me, it's now about having focus and probably centers of excellence within the business around how do we not just give everyone access and have their own use cases, but how do you not have 50 different agents, but do 5 well and then 10 well and have that real drive from a core team.
Yeah, interesting. And one last question around internal AI. Of course, we've seen all these stories about token maxing and just using a lot of credits internally. And since it's called kind of your official go-to tool internally, have you set budgets? Are you not there yet where you don't have to be concerned with internal AI spend?
We're not too concerned about it. If my people like blow out budgets, I'm all for it. We're not spending like heaps. I think just kind of the nature of our business. It's like this, it's nothing to be too concerned about it. I do get frustrated sometimes, when you get maxed out and it says wait 5 hours till you
Yeah.
reset, and then I just flip over to Gemini or ChatGPT, or you're running like four different systems all at the same time, and obviously like working through the different models and optimizing it to work for you. And then it's ultimately how do you make yourself more and more productive and more scalable.
Yeah, yeah, interesting. I think it'll be an interesting budget season coming up this fall as CFOs have to contend with all the ask for internal AI spend and token spend.
Yeah, I'd like, and you want to be mindful of it, but I also find it crazy that like I've always been just absolutely go hard at software, like anything that we can find software for, absolutely buy it. Not concerned about that. We basically always say software, not salaries, both internally and externally. Like it's a whole lot cheaper than people, even if you get a scary AI bill at some point in time. I also find it really ironic from a customer perspective. You're selling into construction can be this kind of like risk averse industry. And if someone's worried about spending a bit on software, but then at the same time they're making mistakes on their job site and they're bleeding money, it's like an ironic exposition of risk aversion that you're risk averse to make a decision there, but you've got risk in your business that's costing you money. And so I think about it in a similar way to our own business, that it's that optimization of control versus speed. And like, even though you might see a big number, like how much money you're actually really losing compared to say people in your business getting blocked on cloud productivity because you haven't given them enough budget.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Appreciate that perspective. Yeah, a lot of debate right now about internal AI spend. So we'll see how the budget season shakes out this fall. But sounds like things are growing great. One more question before we wrap today, because it looks like we're double the headcount, maybe four to five x the AR since we last spoke. But what's top of mind for you? We're about halfway through 2026. So what's top of mind for you for the rest of the year?
Oh, Q2, end of that in 21 days. So yeah, just laser focus on the end of the quarter. Look, I think for me, it's really like it's the soundbite of going from founder to CEO, org structure, kind of gaps in that, getting the right people, building that kind of next layer of ownership we've had a leadership team, which is multi-geo. And so therefore you've had it quite larger, and it's really about that next layer up, really empowering them and making sure that I got clarity across the business, and then really how fast can we run. So that's still a work in progress to build that operating rhythm for the company. But ultimately it's going, how can we set ourselves up to build some really cool stuff, scale across multiple geos, and do it all yesterday.
Yeah, always yesterday. And one more question before we wrap. And you mentioned the founder to CEO transition. So is there a point for you as a founder where you realize, boy, I've got to stop acting like a founder and more as a manager? Is it a slow progression? Is it something that hits you in the face? Tell us, because that's really interesting. Tell us your founder to CEO transition.
What's interesting as a founder, you like whack-a-mole in a sense that it's your default reaction is you see a problem, you hit a problem, and you deal with that type stuff. And that's almost been the forcing your default response when it's going, hey, this one area of the business, this one department, like that either that's weaker, they're struggling, I can lean in and help and give opinions. And I'm not I slay it more towards the founder mode side of things. And it's not like, hey, here's a goal, have autonomy, like completely off you go. I want to be across the details and help shape that and ultimately raise standards. It's going, that's not good enough, lift it up, challenge us to be great. But ultimately you realize some of that behavior creates problems around going, not if you don't give space, but it's going, if things are problematic, do I need to go in and fix them? Or it's like, why are they problematic, and kind of taking a step back for it and making sure that we've got enough ownership, I think is a big thing. We've had maybe some problems around whether it's leveling up the team and getting extra experience, which are gaps in the org chart, or multiple people owning certain things, and kind of the founder being in the ops or the office of the CEO department, almost like catching a lot of balls and plugging some gaps. And you take a step back for that and realize, hey, you're really trying to design an org chart and give clarity. One of the one of our investors, who's one of the founders of Clipchamp, got bought by Microsoft a few years ago. They do video software, which is now on the Office 365 suite, but said it to someone to me 12 months ago, which is going, you realize how much more important people and culture becomes, less around the fluffy almost side of it, but say the clarity and the alignment side of things. If you go and have a 5% lift across 100 people, which then becomes 130 people in 12 months, that's a really significant impact. And so it makes you think about your own time as having leverage. And ultimately, for me to stop being operational, and really the biggest points of leverage I have is how I can communicate both internally and externally to our business and to our customers. So that's the ambition where we get to. And obviously, there's a bunch of stepping stones and work in between.
Sounds like whatever you're doing internally is working. Sounds like great success so far in the last couple of years, at least. So, Alistair, really appreciate you coming on the show, updating your journey of where you stand today. If listeners would like to learn more about ProcurePro, where should we send them online?
ProcurePro.co, that's co, not .com. And Ben, just want to say thank you. I just alluded to it earlier, but when I was right back at the start of my second cut, basically the post pivot, but found a journey once we actually felt that real pull of product market fit. And I was working out how do we do this SaaS metric stuff, and literally going through just spending hours and hours reading your blog posts and working out that actually it all comes back to the chart of accounts and here's how you do it. And then some of the outcomes of that was certainly reception from the VC community as well. You've got a handle on your metrics just ahead of your peers in terms of stage of business. A lot of that is thanks to the content you put out, Ben. So I'm happy to be able to share the mic and contribute to what you're putting out there for the tech industry, which has really helped me and I'm sure helps thousands of other founders.
Appreciate that. I appreciate that feedback. So I'm glad it helped, which is the whole point. Yeah, thank you. So Alistair, yeah, thanks for coming on the show again. Hopefully have you on in another year or so. Check in, see what's going on. But sounds like great success going. Keep that going. And again, thanks for coming on the show today.
Thanks, Ben.
Thanks.